all of these questions, on the one hand, I've always wanted community just based on how I grew up. On the other hand, there wasn't a lot of representation for me to look up to. And the representation that there was pretty self-effacing and negative. I was really lost about what kind of Judaism would be for me. And so that's why in my mid-20s, I went on Birthright to reconcile these things, and to hopefully decide if I wanted to be fully Jewish, whatever that meant. And so for those of you who don't know, Birthright is a program aimed at strengthening Jewish identity and community among young American Jews by sending them to Israel for free. That's right. They pay for your plane, your food, your lodging, and take you on a tour of Israel. I had known people who had gone, but I myself was a little skeptical. I thought it was some kind of scheme, like they were going to try to convert me to something, to which my friends all said, "You are Jewish. Like, what can they even convert you to?" And so with that, I decided, okay, let's do this. And it was beautiful. So much of the trip, you're seeing these gorgeous sites like Mount Masada, which is an ancient fortress overlooking the Dead Sea. And we climbed it as the sun rose. And it was like, what, are we in a movie? It was that level of beautiful. And our last stop on the trip was to visit Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Memorial Museum. As we entered the museum, we walked on a downward slope, which our guide informed us was to signify that we were about to witness the lowest man could go to. Again, like kind of rough for 8 a.m. in the morning. In one of the first rooms, I was struck by films of Jewish people living their best lives in their villages right before World War II. There were fancy Euro Jews in fur coats. There were children singing. There were country Jews tending to their farms. There were Jews dancing in the streets, unapologetically bursting with joy and vigor. No one in these videos was like, "I'm just culturally Jewish." They were loudly proclaiming who they were, and nobody was in fear. Now, I actually hadn't ever seen this before. I didn't know what historical Judaism looked like, except for stacked up bodies I had seen in textbooks. I was really struck that these weren't unnamed corpses. These were people. These were family. These were children living their best lives. As we went lower into the museum, our group came upon a living room plopped down in the middle of the pathway. The bookshelves were lined with leather-bound books, which, can we all say that all books should be leather-bound? I mean, what is more classy than a leather-bound book? I don't know the answer to that question. The walls were lined with family photos, and in the middle of the living room was my favorite object on planet Earth, which is a desk. I love desks. I love thinking about what love letters were written here. What did people do here? So I felt very attached to this living room. And I thought about how this living room, even though it was from the early 1940s, it felt really contemporary. It felt like it could be the living room of any of my friends' parents. At that moment, as I thought about how this living room could be anybody's living room, any of my friends' living room, I finally understood something on a visceral level that I never had before. This could have been me. The only thing that separated me from the Holocaust was 75 years and monumental good luck. It was that day at Yad Vashem where I decided that I was connected to all other people in history. And it wasn't just that I was connected to Jews, and it wasn't just that this horrible thing could befall only the Jews. What I started to think was, if this could happen to one group of people, it could happen to any. Why not? We are all vulnerable when there's that level of hatred and othering. And that was sort of the day where my conception of Judaism became connection to all people, connection to Jews, that we're all suffering from the same factors, just in different ways. Now, maybe it's strange that I found my conception of Judaism in Yad Vashem. Typically when people talk about the Holocaust, that's where there are a lot of questions about God, like, what kind of God would let this happen? So maybe it's strange, but to me, it makes sense because it shows that essential vulnerability that we all have, and that it's possible for something like that to happen if we're all not vigilant.